Good evening, everyone. Welcome. I know traffic's pretty thick out on the Beltline, so we'll just let folks go ahead and file in on the sides. Welcome. Great evening, beautiful night outside, and 9 wonderful artists to talk about their work. I'm Joe Becker, as many of you know, and I'm the Chief Curator and Vice President here at Frederick Meijer Gardens and Sculpture Park. And tonight is our members exclusive. It's the opening of our fall exhibition. Highly recommend it. As you probably know, for the last 4 years, this is also our contribution to Art Prize. So although this exhibition overlaps with Art Prize, this will continue through early January. Before we turn this over to the artists who you really want to hear from, a few general comments about this exhibition. As you've seen in our last few fall exhibitions where we're working with contemporary artists in a group fashion, we took a new turn this year, and we tried to involve the artists in our permanent collection in a very interesting and unique way. Many of you know, because of how many times they come, Meijer Gardens has a very good relationship with the artists in its permanent collection, the living ones. I think the ones that have passed on probably like us too, but the living ones very much as well. And we turned to them and we said, you know, we are just a few sets of eyes looking out at the global art world. You're another. And from your vantage point, from your experiences, who are those emerging sculptors, who are those emerging artists that you think would enjoy working on a group exhibition here at Meijer Gardens? And the response was really tremendous. It was a team here on the home front also that brought this to life, and we've been working on this exhibition for about 18 months, maybe a little bit longer. And there are 5 of us that came together every few weeks, and then every other week, and then every week, and then we were bumping into each other every day these last few weeks. Myself and Lorene Grinwald. Where are you, Lorene? She's somewhere. She's probably out somewhere working. Heidi Holst. She's in the back. Carrie Westra. And Marlene Vanderhill. So it's a group effort that brought this wonderful group here to the stage tonight. So to those 4, thank you very much. The one disadvantage that is a part of an exhibition like this is that because there are so many artists and they're from all over the world, from across Europe, across the United States, originally from the Middle East, we don't get a chance to see all of the work in advance. So it was a series of Christmas mornings as the crates were being opened, and there were lots of wonderful things to enjoy and some surprises. Oh, I thought it was going to be smaller than that. I thought it was going to be larger than that. Oh, how does this fit together? There were all those kind of wonderful things. But ultimately, I think what you'll see when we're finished this evening is a very cohesive and, I believe, a very elegant exhibition. And there are many voices at the table. And in some ways, this exhibition is a microcosm of the art world as it exists today. That is decidedly international. It is global in many, many proportions, but it is also very much about experimentation and use of materials and the pursuit of concepts in some interesting ways. So I hope you enjoy. What we're going to do this evening is we're going to just come down the line here and give each of the artists a few minutes to talk about themselves and to talk about their works. Depending on how much time we have left, I've got a couple of questions I'd like to pose, and then the artists will go first into the galleries. They'll follow Lorene and Carrie into the galleries, and then we'll welcome you all into the gallery. So thank you very much for coming. So first slide, please. Oops. Went too fast. First up is Armin Egap. He's Egyptian, and he works in Pietrasanta, Italy. Armin, would you tell us a little about yourself and your work?
First of all, thank you. Do you hear me? Yeah. First of all, thank you for coming, and thanks for organizing the show. And special thanks for the name, Emerging Artist. Makes me feel quite young. I believe you didn't see the show yet, right? Yeah. Actually, I would have preferred that you would have seen the show before. I wasn't joking. Anyway, specifically about this piece, I don't think I have a lot to say because it's more about silence than speech or talk or... It's not a piece that has any message or a story. As we heard, it's a piece of granite. It's a black granite from Zimbabwe. And for me, it's as simple as that. A piece of granite, it's a piece of nature which exists before us with millions of years. And I had my meeting with that piece, with that part of nature. And that was the result. And I think the meeting is with you now. I mean, I had my story with the stone, and I hope you have your story, each one. So I don't have a lot to say about this piece.
Armin, could you tell us a little bit about your background and how you came to work in Pietrasanta?
My background, I'm, maybe you can tell from the name, I'm from Armenian parents, and I'm born in Egypt. And I moved to Italy because I went through something called Prize of Rome. And I sort of fell in love with Pietrasanta, which is a very small town in Italy, and has long story with stone carving and sculpture ever since Michelangelo, that he went there and discovered the quarries and marble and stuff.
Great. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Katrin Albrecht. Katrin, welcome.
Hello. Thank you so much for having me here. I feel totally blessed to be part of this show, and yeah, to see all those faces being so interested in art is really wonderful. My name is Katrin Albrecht. I'm German, but I'm at the moment living in the UK in London. And my piece is probably known to most of you because it's the fabric bricks. You can see it here. So this work is made out of my friend's clothes. So it's made out of t-shirts, trousers, all sorts of things that have been donated to me. And I pressed them, or transformed one material into another material. So the clothes became bricks, and the bricks are, again, a material where you can build out a house out of, or a corner, or in this case, it is, yeah, maybe I shouldn't tell because it's a surprise. Yeah. Yeah, I studied fine art sculpture in Berlin. Originally, I'm from the south of Germany, Bavaria, from a small, tiny village between Munich and the Alps. It's very rural, so I had the need to go and yeah, see the big world, and here I am. Yeah.
And we jumped over to Michele. Michele.
Okay. Hello, everybody.
Michele, pull the microphone close, yeah.
Sorry. Hello, everybody. I am Michele Ciribifera, and I come from Italy. I live in Perugia, Grand Rapids, sister city. And I wish to thank everyone to be here tonight. And most I thank all of those who give me the possibility to show my work in this spectacular park. I want to tell you about how my work began. My father is an artisan woodmaker, and my grandfather too. So when I was a child, my toys and games were about assembling pieces of wood. My high school, the Institute of Art for Wood Restoration, gave me the possibility, the chance to discover my passion for the sculpture and art. And so I went to the Accademia di Belle Arti of Perugia, and I started my path into the art world. I had the great opportunity, chance to be the assistant of the American artist Beverly Pepper for many years. And this gave me the but also to try different materials. The pieces you see here tonight, titled Anomal or Tsunami, are the every latest work and are born from my research on the nature, and in this specific case, my love for the sea, but mostly my respect for it. This led me to analyze the wave and to reproduce them. The result is the sculpture you see. Touching, you will feel the essential structure of the wave in each single element. Looking at them, it feels like rain to the sound and the power of the sea. I hope you will enjoy it. Thank you very much. Grazie tanto.
Lucy.
Hi, I'm Lucy Glendinning. I'm delighted to be here. Thank you for inviting me to this wonderful sculpture park and beautiful gardens. This piece is called Featherchild 1, and it's really about genetic manipulation. And I wanted to ask the question that once we have solved all the illnesses we can with genetic manipulation, where will we then go from there? And it's really about starting debate and answering questions. And I wanted to kind of start the debate as where will we go? Will we be able to resist enhancing the next generations? And I was thinking about this, and then I heard that they had discovered the gene for feathers. And I started to think about the myth of Icarus, and I work a lot in wax. So this is kind of how this piece developed. And the reason it's a child and a sleeping child is because I wanted the viewer to feel the vulnerability, to feel a sense that they need to take care of the piece. And I felt that a child, and particularly sleeping, kind of gives that sense, or I hope it gives that sense to the viewer. I live in England, in Somerset, about an hour and a half from London, and I'm delighted to be here. If anyone's got any questions, come and find me later.
Thank you. And picking up on what Lucy said, all the artists will be in the gallery after our presentation tonight. David. David, welcome.
Thank you. Is that working? Yeah. Well, thanks for having me. It's really great to be here. When I was very small, my really eccentric uncle gave me a book, a real early science fiction book called The Skylark of Space. And this book was really influential on me. And mainly, at the time, it made me want to become a science fiction writer. So skipping over many years, one thing and another happened, and I found myself, instead of becoming a writer, instead making my own spaceships, as the people in the novel did. The thing about a spaceship is that it's not interesting so much. I mean, in itself, it's an interesting object, but perhaps mainly the interesting thing is what it does. It goes somewhere else. And I feel similarly about my work, is that they're at least as much about the space around them and about shaping the space around them as they are about the actual thing. So in this piece, the surface, the smooth surface of it is more than anything else, kind of a dividing plane between the inside and the outside, and a shaper of the space around it. The title is Corby, which is the Scottish word for crow, and Scotland is on some people's minds tonight. Birds also literally shape the air around themselves in order to fly. So I don't think it's a coincidence that a lot of my pieces, although they're designed from purely geometric forms, and kind of rigidly geometric forms, they tend to resemble birds, and there's a connection with that space shaping thing. And that's my statement.
Thanks, David. At Meijer Gardens, we use alternative alphabets, so the one on the screen isn't quite the one here on the stage. So we're going to go back to Osman in the middle of the stage. Welcome.
Thanks for inviting all of us but myself, and thank you all for coming. Believe it or not, I'm the closest thing to a hometown boy. I'm currently teaching at the University of Michigan, which isn't that close. I don't know what the... All right, go blue. Probably to kind of understand the work is also to understand the context it was sort of thought about and built in. So put yourself 5 years ago in a post-mortgage crisis recession. I had just moved to the Detroit metro area and kind of seen the neighborhoods. So the idea of home and house, especially because in America we think of it as a proxy for the American dream, and sort of the threat to it in a way because of things like the mortgage crisis or what I saw in Detroit, sort of allowed this sort of work to come about. The material is fluorescent tubes, so in a way it is your proverbial glass house, and in a way it's about the fragility of that idea here in the structure of the house, but also in the idea of home, how fragile that state really will be. The house also goes through a routine. It turns off, and then it sort of Morse codes a little sentence from UNESCO's play, Rhinoceros, the last line, where the main protagonist says, "I will not capitulate." So we can see this house, despite all these other rhinoceroses running around and destroying the rest of the houses or the neighborhoods around it, decides that it won't. It'll be resilient, it'll exist, it will always be the home. In UNESCO's play, the rhinoceros was a metaphor for fascism. Here it becomes other threats, another type of threat to the American dream, to ideas of home, the sanctity of home. And then you'll see there's some contextual work here in this installation, like the Eames chair, you'll see, which I know comes out of here. But also, beyond just the chair, it's the utopic idea of what the Eames were trying to do with that chair, so one of the shell chairs, this idea that they could mass produce it, on cheap for the masses, which we know didn't quite happen, but some of the ideals that are built into the thoughts about home, house, and the construction of it.
And how did you come to sculpture?
I came via engineering, which doesn't explain any electrical work. That's, but I did an undergrad in engineering, and then realized, all you do is a theory in engineering. You don't actually build anything. So kind of the desire to actually build, which I think all of us share, this idea of being a maker, brought me more to the arts.
Thank you. Jean-Paul.
Hello, thanks for having me. I hope that we all continue to be emerging artists. I know I'm on the younger side of this group, but hopefully we can always continue to grow and be learning more about ourselves and about our work. I'm a sculptor because I find it to be the most freeing thing in my life. It has no right or wrong answers, no blueprints, no yes or no. I just get to work with the material and have a dialogue with it, and it tells me what it wants to do, and we work together. This piece is steel. I've been working with steel the last couple years. I really think that the strength of the material is exciting because it will survive hopefully longer than I will, opposed to more fragile materials. This piece I did with just oxygen and propane torch and a pipe with a cut in it to bend and get my leverage. It's the beginning of a larger series. I usually discover a process and then try and exhaust it and grow with it and figure out what I can do with it and then leave it. So these bending straps are what I've been working on most recently. And the scale is also growing with this series, which doesn't always happen, but is now. And steel is also really wonderful because you can always go back to it. You can leave it in the back of the bushes and throw it away and hide it, and then pull it out, put a fresh grind on it, and go right back at it, or cut it in half and slap it on another piece. There's a real freedom there that used to work with bronze a lot, and the process is, you have to have your idea really ready and work to the end, where this you can change your mind on an instant and execute that in a day and see your work at the end of the day. It's a sketching almost with the material opposed to a conceptual process you have to go from the beginning to the end with, and that freedom to me is awesome. So that's why I've been working with steel lately, and really happy to be here. It was amazing artists, and thank you.
You'll have to give us specific directions to your house so we can go rummage around in the bushes behind. And
It's a
yeah.
mountain.
Christopher Yaki.
Hello, thank you for coming, Meijer Garden. Thank you for having me. It's a great exhibition. Proud to be here. If I was to simplify my piece, I'm a hockey player from Detroit. Nothing new, I'm sure, around here. But it's more than that. I'm interested in motion, fluidity, technology, laser cutting, manufacturing. The automobile industry is all part of my family, surrounded by it. So those are things I'm thinking about when creating my work, this piece. The manufacturing aspect of it, thinking about multiples. You can see in this piece, there's 3 different panels. Each panel has its own form, shape, and there's 4 layers of it, and it's repeated 4 times, flipped and churned. So I'm playing with these patterns and trying to see how they can work together, respond together, and also that with the hockey aspect of it, I'm interested in being physical with the work too, creating space with space. Often in my work there's a lot of bending and twisting, which you do not see within this piece, but I like to bend and twist with my body and be physically part of it. And design also is an element too. I'm drawing on the computer. All these forms are created in drafting illustration programs, AutoCAD, Illustrator. And the source of the information are steel shavings from a drill press, common from auto industry, and I'm scanning them in. And from there, I'm finding new forms and shapes. I'm searching for line, creating new shapes, and trying to think of how I can take this 2-dimensional form and make it 3-dimensional.
Chris, could you tell us how you came to sculpture, a little bit about that part of your background?
Well, I went to high school at Cranbrook, and the decorative arts kind of woke me up. And being at that campus, walking around, it was a real treat. And I also went there for graduate school, so I spent a large portion of my life being there, being surrounded by art. And other parts in my life that have had equal importance, I would say, is travel. Going to Europe, seeing parts of the world. It's helped a lot of how I look at art.
Thank you. And Antonella Zazera. Antonella, welcome. And her colleague Benedetta is going to help with the translation. Please.
For me, it's a great honor to be here and exhibit at the Friedrich Meijer Gardens, an ideal place for the contemporary art. Thank you to all the organizers for inviting me. And the work I am presenting is Armonico 167. It's belong to a kind of sculpture that I call armonici, that are born from a close relationship between man and nature. Armonico è il risultato di una ricerca basata sullo studio di tre valori artistici per me fondamentali: il segno, la luce e lo spazio.
So, harmonicos are the result of a research based on the study and the relationship between three fundamental artistic values: sign, light, and space.
Valori che ho analizzato nel corso del tempo attraverso la pittura, la fotografia e negli ultimi 10 anni attraverso la scultura.
Values that I analyzed over the years through painting before, then photography, and then in the last 10 years through sculpture.
I valori segnici, che io chiamo segno traccia, da sempre presenti nel mio linguaggio artistico, si sono materializzati in fili di rame.
So the signs that I call segno traccia, always present in my artistic language, materialize themselves in copper wires.
Fili segno, attraverso cui disegno nello spazio.
So these signs are wires with whom I draw in the space.
Linee di forza che si estendono nello spazio.
Power line that cross the space.
Scultura dalla forma primaria, naturale, spontanea.
So it's a sculpture of a primary form, natural and spontaneous.
Che si adagia nello spazio, si forma e si trasforma in relazione al luogo che andrà ad accoglierla.
That lies in the space and it's formed and transformed according to the space that it's going to receive it.
Armonico è un corpo di energia che la luce vivifica.
Armonico is a body of energy, so that light takes life from light.
E che trasforma la propria forma in luce.
And that transforms its own shape in light.
La luce modella la superficie.
Light molds the surface.
Enfatizza le linee forza.
Emphasizes the strength lines.
E tesse la forma.
And weaves the shape.
Il filo di rame assorbe.
The copper wire absorbs.
Trattiene e sprigiona.
Retains and releases the light.
Generando ritmiche di colore che marcano il tempo e la superficie pittorica della scultura.
Generating rhythmic colors that mark the time and the pictorial value of the sculpture.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We have a little bit of time and a couple of questions I have bubbling in my head, and we'll go back down in the opposite direction. This is really an interesting show to look at in terms of the artists and their use of materials. And I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit about how you came to work with the materials in the particular work that's here in the show, and if your work is exclusively linked to that material or whether you work in other materials as well. So you first.
Okay. Allora, altrimenti ha chiesto come mai sei arrivata ad usare questo materiale e se è l'unico materiale che usi nelle tue realizzazioni.
Il filo di rame è un elemento puro, naturale, è un elemento conduttore.
So the copper wire is a natural element and conducts energy.
Dato che io lavoro da sempre sulla luce e sul segno, il rame è un elemento ottimale per trasmettere la luce, il calore, e il filo è per me quindi segno.
So that's why I always work with sign and light, so the copper is the best material to transmit light, and the wire is my sign. Usi solo il rame?
No, uso anche cellulosa and copper wires.
Okay, so she uses a cellulose too, mixed with copper wires to realize another kind of sculptures that she calls paper sculptures.
Chris, what about you?
I work in steel. The situation I'm in New York, been there 14 years. I work for Mark DeSuvero, and his studio is set up for steel. I was good at it. I knew the material and just started working with it. And also my space doesn't have heat. So the wintertime, it's hard to paint, glue. So steel feels very natural to me there. And yeah, it works for me.
David, what about? Oh, wait, we jumped to. Yeah, we'll just keep going. Go
Okay.
ahead. We'll ignore the slides.
Okay, I actually, over the last few years, have been working mainly in carbon fiber and fiberglass, and a big installation that was made out of the way they build ultralight aircraft, which is with foam ribs wrapped with fiberglass, and I made a sort of a big cathedral structure that I traveled around to a few different places. You can see this stuff on my website. I had been making some plywood pieces a while back, and it kind of evolved this process to get what I wanted out of them. I prefer to work with materials that are kind of ordinary, humble. I don't do well with like expensive hardwoods, and I've tried to cast a few things in bronze, but it's been a disaster for one reason or another. So I like plywood. It's a very efficient way to use a tree, because you just unpeel the tree on a big lathe and glue it up, and you get all this wood for your money. And similarly with the fiberglass, it's actually a very economical material to work with. You need a real minimum of machinery, and I tend to be looking. I try to use the material, particularly with the fiberglass. I'm trying to use it for its structural properties, because I feel like it's been overlooked in sculpture a lot. That tends to be used as a sort of a cheap substitute. Like you want to cast something in bronze and you can't afford it, so you make it in fiberglass, and it has all these amazing structural properties that I don't really think have been exploited too much. So I'm trying to push that as much as I can. And it's been good to, this piece actually is pretty new. I decided to revisit the plywood at one point. I had some more ideas about it, and that's how I ended up making another series of these plywood pieces.
Thanks, David. Lucy gave us a little hint before, but if you pursue it a little further.
Well, when I graduated, I worked in a bronze foundry for Elizabeth Frink, making molds and wax in the wax shop. And I'm a modeler rather than a constructor, so I like to model and make molds and cast. And I like wax because I like the versatility of it. I also use, and I'm going to be careful how I put this, because if I say rubber, you're going to say something silicone, so silicone rubbers and things like that, because I pour rubbers. So I'm always modeling and then molding, and it's in that process. And wax, I like wax because it's such a versatile, and it's got a transparency in the surface, so it can be quite like skin. And it actually is quite a traditional material to use. And I find I work on more than one piece at once. I can work on 3 or 4 pieces at once. And so when I was modeling in clay, I would put them to one side, and then when I came to look at them, I had always forgotten to wet down the clay, so they dried out and had to sort of start again. So wax is the medium I kind of drawn to. And I use feathers and things. I live very rurally, so I kind of embedded in the landscape, and I quite often use materials that I come across and things. And I think that I've worked with leaves and feathers and things, and I think I'm kind of drawn to that from the landscape that I'm in. So
Thank you. Michele?
For me, it's not important. Yes, I think it's best.
Do you understand the
Thursday,
question?
Yes. I don't know. For me, it's not important in the material because when I think the sculpture, I think the sculpture with the material. In this case, I use the stainless steel and brass. Sorry. And why I use this material? Because it's very strong. Because it's è molto duro e in questo caso insomma le sculture resistono molto di più.
Okay, so this kind of material, so this mineral is very strong and hard, so the sculptures can resist more and more, can last more time.
Jean-Paul?
Early on, I would do dumpster dive missions and find whatever I could that didn't have a value necessarily. So when I worked with those materials, I was very free to not think about this tube of paint costs $20, etc. But they didn't hold up as long as I liked, and steel kind of was a good transition because it was readily available where I am. I can go to ranches and lend a hand, and the farmer will give me his leftover tractor pieces or whatever, and then I can chop them up and get to it, and they'll be able to go in the backyard in the big pile of steel that I've created, and then I'll pull them out, and there's still a piece of sculpture there that can be worked, where the trash material just would kind of break apart unless it was cared for. And it takes a lot of space to house sculpture, and it's not always cared for, so you can neglect steel and still bring it back to life days, months, years later. So that's kind of was a natural transition for me from that not worrying about the value of the material and just worrying about working the piece.
Great. Osman?
So for me, I think materiality comes out of the inquiry that I'm investigating. So in this case, the idea of how. So it was very important for me that the materials come out of our a hardware store, and almost to the point where anyone can make this. It's for me, it's about preciousness of ideas, not of objects. So that was kind of important, at least for this work. The other was this sort of kind of personal challenge. I don't know if anyone's read Marshall McLuhan's Medium is the Message, and he sort of poo-poos the light bulb, saying it's a medium that doesn't actually have content. And I was like, no, it can have content if you flicker it, right? It can actually Morse code something. So that was another sort of personal challenge on how can something like this actually convey content.
Katrin?
Well, I have to say I'm totally attached to fabric because I'm a trained tailor. So I started off with a in Germany like a apprenticeship how to become a tailor, and I did that for many years actually, working in different companies. And then I decided to study fashion design, and that really didn't do the job for me. So eventually I went to fine arts, and I found my destination in sculpture. But I like the combination between working in my crafts, like what I simply love doing with my hands, and taking the skills not into fashion but into sculpture. So I work a lot with fabric in all sorts of scale, I would say, big and small. And especially I like to transform it, to play around with the material and make something completely different out of it, like in this piece, yeah.
Armin?
Yeah, this piece is in granite, and I mainly work with black granite, this material. But I think there's another element which is not as less as a material in the granite. I can't say this is sculpture is only granite. It's granite and time. I think the time it takes to do any work, it's very important. And this is very slow process in my case, which I understand that it might be very disadvantage for many other artists. They want more freedom. They want to express more idea faster, or I don't know. I can't hide my background in that. I'm not in a hurry, and the time factor is very important. So I can't say it's only the granite, although I'm very obsessed with it. But time is very important, and I think in any work we do, either art or not, it's the human experience, and that's the time it takes to have. Each one has his own human experience with whatever he's doing, and I think that's in the end what we're living. So yeah, many times we are very stingy with our time, and we want to be smart, we want to be more convenient. And maybe my background being from very old cultures and third world, we don't worry about that so much. And I'm happy with that. Regarding the granite, yeah, it's, before you asked me about Italy, and I went to Italy, I was very interested to try the marble, and somehow just we didn't click. It was too sweet, too beautiful, too, I don't know. I remember I don't know, we have a lot of Italians here, I have to be honest here. When I went to Florence, and it wasn't the first time, but maybe the third time, when I went to Florence and I've seen the sculpture of David brought inside because it's fragile, I was very disappointed. Yeah, it was like a dream which collapsed. And it never went away. And I just went back to the granite, which was like my, maybe my first love, if you say, it's after trying many things. And granite, it's a material which I can go on forever, by the way. You have to stop me.
Give us another minute. Yeah. Finish?
Carry on, are you sure?
Yeah.
Okay. Granite is a material that keeps on saying no. It's very resistant and very doesn't want to change, as you said about the steel, I guess. Granite is much more. It's, as I said, it's millions of years, exist, not used to change, right? It was there for a long time. And that's when I mentioned in the beginning, it's like interfering in a part of nature. It's a big responsibility. So I can't do it so fast. So many decisions, I have to think about it again. And that element which younger artists dreaming with this freedom, I find myself, okay, I'm free to do what I want with the piece, but I have a big responsibility. So I stop many times and re-ask myself, and somehow it's very meditative to, okay, that's what I think today. Maybe I just don't do anything today, just I'll think about it tomorrow. And as it's a material which it's very slow, we fit. I'm very slow somehow. And that allows me to think and be sure, not be sure, but what I believe more, at least, that part of nature is much older than us, deserve to be treated with a bit of respect. That's why in the beginning I said I have no message, there's no, it's another thing. It's just me and this part of the stone, which is part of nature. And yes, I think I stop here.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. I'm getting the high sign from the back of the room that it's time to open the galleries. So, Armand, if you wouldn't mind leading everybody, Lorene or Caleb standing against the wall, he can take you to the galleries. We'll give them a few minutes to get there. Thank you each very much for participating. Thanks for the translation services. We really appreciate it.